Hello, everyone. We are going to wait for just a quick second while we wait for some folks to join in. I apologize that we're about 4 or 5 minutes late. We are working with brand spanking new technology here, so that's always fun to have to break that sort of thing in. Welcome to the second episode of Inside Weddings. Today we are going to be talking about photographers, photography as it relates to weddings. And of course, we have a true pro with us. Charrie from Photog Boss-Babe is one of our local, I would say, Central Indiana-ish wedding photographers. I'm sure she's like me. We travel all over the place, but we're primarily based here. So for the people, the millions of people that are watching, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your business, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for having me. I'm super excited. My name is Charrie, like the fruit, all that looks like sherry. I have been doing photography really since I was old enough to hold a camera, point and shoot, but I've been paid to do it for about 10 years now. And I've been doing weddings for about 6 years. It is my full-time gig and I love it. I do it a lot.
Yeah. How many weddings would you say you've done at this point?
Well over 100. I'm into the 150s now.
Holy cow, that's a lot of weddings. Yeah, that's always a good thing. And I'll tell you, and that's the beautiful thing about experience is the more that you do, the more unusual situations you run into. We worked a wedding, I think it was March of this year, and okay, well there's that cup that's gone. Just knocked over a couple.
The May wedding in the barn.
Yeah, that was the one where the generators weren't working, none of the power was working, and I think at one point you drove your Jeep up to try to see if we could broadcast via Bluetooth just to get some kind of sound for the ceremony.
Yeah.
And then what they ended up bringing another generator or something out, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So they brought another generator out. We were able to get up and running with that thing, but for a while it was touch and go. We probably would have been way more trouble if our bride had not been an hour and a half late to her own wedding.
Right.
So that kind of saved the bacon a little bit. What was that?
It all turned out beautifully, didn't it?
Yeah, it actually went really well. We did an amazing gender reveal at that wedding that was just super special. And so on. So for those of you that are new, this is actually a new thing. So everybody's pretty much new. This is a program that's basically designed to help people look for their photographers, look for a wedding photographer, know what kind of questions to ask, at least for this episode. It's designed to basically bridge the gap between wedding vendors and some of the information that's floating out there and maybe misinformation that's floating out there in the wedding industry, and our couples who basically have absolutely no clue exactly what kind of questions to ask or how to go about it. And I'll let you kind of expound on this, but I like to tell my couples that effectively what they're basically doing when they go through the wedding planning process is they're kind of making as good educated guesses as they can, but essentially just crossing their fingers and hoping to Christ that everything works out okay. Has that been your experience?
Some of them. Some of my couples are really well organized and ask the right questions ahead of time. And I feel like half of it is our job as photographers to make sure that we lead them in the right direction and make sure that they ask for the right things. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. I think we have a responsibility as people that are in this industry to not only give our couples an opportunity to ask the right question, also show them the information that's going to essentially empower them to find their best vendors. And that's actually that's a really important aspect, because not every wedding vendor is right for every couple. And it's in that process that we find the ones that are going to help us. So let me ask you first and foremost, what is the number one question? If you had to come up with a number one question that any couple should ask of a potential photographer, what would you suggest that should be?
Are you available on our date?
Okay, well, yes. So, all right, fair enough. That's definitely true. Yeah, it doesn't do you much good to try to book a photographer with not having basically the availability, and next thing you know, you got to turn around and find somebody else. Okay, so let's go for the second one. Let's go for the second question that you wish couples would ask you, because I would say eventually they're going to ask you if you're available. What questions do you wish they would ask you?
Well, I mean, I always break down what you should be asking into 4 different categories, and it starts with logistics, goes to style. The third is collaboration, or how the partner, how you as a photographer work, and then the fourth is packages. Obviously, you want to make sure that your photographer's in your budget. Jason and I just got married in 2000 and what was it, 2020? Yeah, 2020. So we had our big wedding, although we'd been married a while. And I was struggling trying to find a photographer style that I liked, B, a photographer budget, and C, a photographer still available. So those are obviously the top 3 things I was looking for. Were you in my budget? Are you available? And do I even like your style?
Right.
I really do feel, honest to goodness, other than the feeling of, the event itself and the DJ being awesome and your friends and family there, the only thing you have to remember the day are the pictures. The pictures that are better than the iPhone and the Android photos. What you have on your walls for 50 years, hopefully 60, 70, 80 years, the ones that your grandbabies will be looking at. So photography is so vital when it comes to weddings. And you put all that time and effort into it. Just, make sure that you put in the effort to book the right photographer for you. So I can go into those 4 categories if you want, just kind of give you a little rundown of what to look for.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you would elaborate on those 4 categories, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, so obviously the logistics start. So I'm on theknot.com and weddingwire.com, and both of those websites do really great jobs of asking my potential brides, do you need, how many people do you have? What's the date? What are the times? Where is it located? As a photographer, I also don't want to give too much ROI or spend too much time to not receive ROI on whether or not I'm available. I don't want to go through a 20-minute conversation with them if I've already booked the wedding. So logistics, am I available? And then do you have any time restrictions? Some other photographers, a lot in Indiana especially, are part-time photographers. So if they're working part-time or if they're doing photography part-time and working full-time, you want to make sure they're available to get off work and be at your wedding all day. Some of the basics are, how many weddings do you normally shoot in a weekend or in a year? How many have you done? Just to really know, because it's not literally pointing a camera, shooting, and calling it a day. I am the coordinator. I am sometimes the bitchy boss. I am the one who's helping them decide which lapel that the boutonniere goes on, or which leg the garter goes on, or you're so much more than a photographer. Okay, so just understanding that the photographer knows what she or he's doing, and then basically under the logistics category, what do your packages include? So what shooting hours? Do you include prints? Is it just digital? Do you do files? Those basic things. Within that logistics category, I'd also ask, do you travel? We're Indianapolis, but within our contiguous counties as well as the surrounding counties, will we go there? So I've gone all the way down to darn near Kentucky, all the way up to my one furthest away was closest to South Bend. So, but those are rare that I will travel that far. It's not for a 4-hour wedding. It's usually a 12-hour wedding. I'll do that. So
yeah. So I mean, that's actually a really good point. And I think this would probably apply to most wedding vendors, but especially ones that provide their services either starting the day of or on the day of exclusively. Like what's a good example? Well, for instance, on what I do as a DJ, my hard work begins with the preparation the week or so before, and then culminates in the execution of the day. Your hard work, for the most part, starts the day of, taking all the pictures, and then 40 plus hours of editing and things like that. But I think one thing that's really important to note, and I think that maybe most people kind of know this in the back of their head, but they don't think about this, is that we as wedding vendors do way, way, way more than just snap the pictures, than just hit play, and so on and so forth. And that can be something that I won't necessarily go so far to say a make or break, but it can be something that takes an intense load off of the bride and groom. I've had weddings where, and I know that you have too, where there's not been a coordinator to do some of the things that coordinators do very, very well, where you've had to step in and handle those things. You know, you are the one's going to have to go round people up to get pictures, or you've got to let everyone know where the bathroom is, or things like that. This sort of thing is really, really important. And I think it really helps in the finalized sort of package that you deliver as far as customer service is concerned. Tell everyone a little bit about style of shooting. What kind of different styles there are? What's yours? What do you like about it? And
Yeah, that's great. I think in that second category that I always, encourage people to look at, how long have you been shooting weddings, kind of goes into that. But, what inspired you to work in the field? Are you passionate about it? I mean, I have seen photographers, second photographers, and been a guest at a wedding myself, where the photographer really is just kind of not my style of person. I want someone who's out there and fun and journalistic and capturing every moment and every silly moment and every sweet moment. So just asking about style. So my style specifically, I would call more of journalistic. That includes both candid and posed. So a lot of my stuff is, I'll ask the little kids to say boogers, or I'll ask the groom to lick the bride's ear and tell her a dirty joke. Like, I will get those real candid moments, but I'll also get those pose moments too, that are the Mona Lisa style kind of photos. So I would definitely look at their styles. Some people's styles are strictly black and white, which is more and more rare. Some people still shoot with film. Others they will strictly provide 150 photos, and that's it for the day. And those 150 are 9 times out of 10 just posed. Again,
yeah.
that's my style, but if I know that that's the kind of bride, the kind of style bride and groom want, then I'll just straight up tell them, I'm probably not going to be a person. I have matched with every one of my people so far, and I think that's because we've had a conversation ahead of time. They get a feeling with me. They're like, oh my God, she's crazy. Yeah, we're going to work great together. So I got to have brides and grooms to go with me, or brides and grooms and grooms.
So let me ask you a question real quick, because you were talking about posed pictures. And this is something that I've noticed at weddings, that as a DJ master of ceremonies, always drives me a little bit crazy. You have the wedding ceremony that's happening, right? And the wedding party, they're processing down the aisle, or sometimes they're recessing. But what happens is the photographer will stop them in the aisle, stand in the aisle, take a posed picture, and then move on. What are your thoughts on that happening?
That's a good question. So when I first started, I did always tell my brides and grooms and bridesmaids and groomsmen to stop at the very end of the aisle, let me take a posed shot where they're like, ee, and then keep walking. Because I've gotten so much more experience, I know my shutter speed, my aperture, my ISO, I have the lighting just right. Because I've been doing this for a while. I'm able to be like, girl, just walk through. And usually I'm doing this. If any of my brides and grooms or groomsmen and bridesmaids are listening, they know that I'm like, trying to get them out, because we don't want, RBF going down the middle. But as long as they don't have RBF, then I can take the shot. I was a lot more, okay, so I do the style where I'm a little more obtrusive, in that I am up in there a little bit. I would take about 5 to 20 seconds. I am up in there because I want to get the right, nice shot, especially things whatnot. But otherwise, if the photographer has the nice long lens, they shouldn't be the whole time.
Yeah. Okay. So let's chat a little bit then about, I guess let me ask the next question. How am I got to figure out how I want to phrase this, because I want to do it tactfully. What are some of the hallmarks, or some of the easily recognizable symbols of a photographer who may be newer to the game versus a photographer who's got some experience in the game? What can brides and grooms watch for to maybe look for red flags or things like that, in your opinion there?
Okay. Well, first of all, if they don't have a contract, if you're a photographer shooting the wedding and doesn't have a contract, big flag. I have the contract to protect me. I have photography insurance to protect me, as an example. Those are things I didn't have 7 years ago when I first started shooting, just because I didn't know it was important. That's a huge flag. Obviously, a clear website with multiple couples, not just one or two couples or an aunt and uncle's wedding that you just happen to shoot at. or a cousin's wedding. So be sure that they actually have different styles. Reviews. Ask her biggest issues with DJs. Oh, I like that. Okay. Sorry, I'm reading all the lists on there.
No, that's all right. I think that's
so
great. And
yeah.
I think, by the way, if you're out there and you're joining on Facebook, I believe it gives you the option to give permission to show your name, because what happens is on our end, it shows up as Facebook user. It doesn't actually show us what your name is. So I'd love to be able to respond to that. I have a feeling I know who's asking this question. But I mean, first of all, to piggyback off the first thing you said, contracts. Don't hire any wedding vendor. I don't care if it's an officiant, a makeup artist, without a contract ever. I don't care how much money you're going to save. I promise you, you're going to want that contract.
One of the brides we had together, Adam, had an issue with another vendor she had with the contract, still had issues.
Yes.
So you have to have that contract in place.
Yeah, and a contract, and by the way, a contract, there's a very interesting misconception about contracts when it comes to, I think pretty much any contract, but especially when it comes to wedding vendors. Just because it's in the contract does not mean that it's enforceable. It has to be, it's basically what, if it were to go in front of a judge, the judge would basically adjudicate whether or not the contract or that portion of the contract is fair to the vendor or to the client that signed it. I can't just say, hey, if you don't pay me, then I get to come over and steal your cat or something. Like there's no way that would ever be enforceable. Yeah. So, but unfortunately, and this is something that I found within a wedding industry, this is something that I talk to my couples about, is that because brides and grooms are typically only getting married once or maybe even twice, they're absolutely not experts when it comes to the wedding industry. And that lack of knowledge can be utilized by some vendors, not all, most of us are pretty cool, but some vendors that basically that ignorance of the wedding industry can be used and against the couple in many cases. And so let's take that on a photography route. You mentioned contracts. Let me ask you this. Let's talk a little bit about the technical side of it. Talk a little bit about your gear, like your lenses and things like that. What if you were going to tell the couple why your gear is something that they should be interested in, what would you kind of tell them?
So I want to encourage them to understand my gear.
Yeah.
Not that far with any of my brides and grooms, but often it's because I have so much of my work on Facebook, on Google, and on my website and Instagram that they can kind of, the work kind of speaks for itself. I specifically work with Nikon, and I have 7 lenses and 2 different major sets of lighting. But that's because I've been in this for a long time. I understand that they may ask. Now, one thing I do get a lot is when during the reception, perhaps Uncle Larry will be like, "So what kind of camera you shoot with?" That was a long way since film. I went to film school, and it's so cool to have that conversation. And it's never that, who do you think? I think that, kind of piggybacking with that, the hardest thing is when I have to kind of battle, and I mean that lightly, battle with the Aunt Sue with her iPad at the end of the aisle, covering up the bride's dress, and I'm like, no, I want to see.
Don't even get me started. We're getting some really great comments here that I'm going to chat about here in just a second. But the unplugged ceremony is now not just a quirky indie thing anymore. This is a mainstream concept that I will almost always either announce myself or will have the officiant announce. The last thing that you want are your guests who should be participating and should be in the moment with their giant cameras or their cell phones or their iPads in the way. I mean, the only exception you might have is like if you're live streaming for somebody that can't make it. And if that's the case, it's always better to kind of be in the front row and be discreet or something along those lines. But I like to call that, by the way, the put your crap away announcement. That's what I call it, is a put your crap away announcement.
Yeah, I am grateful for the DJs who are around for the ceremonies who do make that announcement, or the officials.
Yes.
So
yeah. So let's talk about one other thing real quick as far as what brides and grooms should check for. And this is something that I've always encouraged, and I'm going to let you kind of elaborate on it. But one of the things I've always encouraged my brides and grooms to do is, hey, when you're looking at this photographer's website, by the way, if you're a bride and groom and you're paying attention to this, A photographer who has a professionally done website is a very good sign that they care enough about their business to invest in it. This is a good sign for you because that means they care enough about the outcome of the product that they have, and they care enough about their couples to invest in something like that. That's a little free tidbit for you. But when it comes to the wedding portfolio, when you go onto the website and you're looking at the portfolio, I always encourage my couples to look at more than just 1 or 2 pictures from a given wedding. Look at the entire day's worth of shots. Can you explain why?
Oh, totally. Absolutely. And I'm one of those weirdos, and I know I'm one of those rare photographers that I, for the most part, showcase all of the photos for the bride and groom and their families onto a website. And that is because it's broken up by bride, groom, bridesmaids, groomsmen, bride and her tribe, groom and his gang, everyone getting ready, everyone at the reception, speeches, cake cutting. There are certain parts that some people have to miss or accidentally miss or leave early or whatnot. They can go right to it. But because I think I have at least 70 weddings on my portfolio. I don't have like the first 50 or 60 on there. They can see my style and how it's progressed over time. And it's actually organized by date. So they can see Charrie's wedding 2 Saturdays ago that's finally done, if I'm ever done in 2 weeks, which, by the way, brides and grooms, it does take us at least 4 weeks. A lot of photographers are saying 12 weeks. I've never gone past 6 weeks. But if they go past the date that they tell you, it's time to start hounding. Just don't hound until that date. So, but yeah, if you want to see my wedding from 4 weeks ago and exactly how that went down, that's a great way to see, oh, this photographer may be really good at ceremonies but horrible at speeches. I don't know. Understand what's important to you.
Absolutely. So let's talk about something this is something that's a personal, I would maybe call it a point of pride or something that I do and I'm not the only person that does this, by the way. But this is something that I feel that any professional master of ceremony / DJ should do at weddings. And that is the teamwork concept between the DJ, the photographer, and by extension, the videographer. First of all, this is something that I haven't got into the inside weddings on DJs yet. I'm going to tackle that. I'm actually going to have a co-host as another DJ, because I don't just want it to be my particular perspective, but this is something that I'm very adamant about. In that's the fact that if you want the trifecta of vendors, well, how do I say this the right way? Because I'll upset all the other vendors. If you want to try a good, solid team of vendors that will have a major impact on your wedding day, you have the DJ, the photographer, and the videographer. And the reason is because your master of ceremonies and your DJ is responsible for creating the memories, setting the stage for creating the memories. Photographer and videographer, they will capture them in their various formats to last a lifetime. So if your photographer is finishing eating and the DJ comes over and says, all right, we're going to start cake cutting now, and da-da-da-da, and now the photographer has to run over to their gear and grab their camera stuff, the synergy between photographer and DJ and videographer and DJ and that type of thing, master of ceremony. I keep saying master of ceremonies because that's actually a separate role. For those of you that are not aware, DJ is a specific kind of role at a wedding that handles mostly the music and the gear aspect of it. The master of ceremonies is the one who is responsible for the flow of the event, making announcements and things like that. So the reason I keep saying master of ceremonies is because I'm just trying to use the proper term. But Charrie, now that I've talked for 20 minutes, go ahead and elaborate a little bit on some of the things that you've seen DJs do well from a photographer standpoint, and some of the things that you really, really just hate that DJs will do.
I don't say any of it is hate. And because when I have worked together, and oh my gosh, I've worked with so many DJs in the past few years, we kind of have a good understanding. Number one is, hey, DJ, just FYI, please don't turn on your crazy, awesome, by the way, rave lights until 30 seconds or a minute after I get my photos done, like 30 seconds into the special dance.
The dance floor lighting?
Yes.
Oh yeah, for DJs, if we have any like newer DJs that are watching, any newer people that are considering going into the DJ business, please, for the love of God, do not turn on your dance floor lights until after the formal dances are over. Otherwise, the bride's dress is going to look like a clown car or cotton candy. It's not going to go well.
Or photographer spends hours on end going, what the hell?
Yeah, I don't care how much color correction you do. It's never going to be completely perfect the way you want it to be.
But I mean, you know, and I hope the brides do understand too that when it comes to the later night reception dancing where she's getting low and, you know, to the window, to the wall, that she is going to have green, blue, red, white all over her. And it's going to be awesome. It's part of the ambiance that you.
Yeah. And by the way, I've got some folks that are asking. Everybody right now is pretty much showing up as Facebook user. And this is something that I think we'll probably have to reiterate a few times. You need to let Restream, you need to give Restream and Facebook permission because I have no idea who's saying what. I can see your comments. I just don't know who's saying them. So make sure that you give Restream and Facebook permission so that I can see who's commenting. Chase, I know that you're in here somewhere. I just don't know which ones are yours and which ones are other people's. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I think a lot of it comes down to, well, you know, we've worked weddings together, and you know that when my timelines happen, they are not your ordinary timelines.
No, I love the special things you do, Adam. The pictures with me rather than just the dollar dance. The special story that you tell about the bride and groom. Oh my gosh, there's so many special touches. I'm gonna say, like, I may not like you so much, but I like.
I'm an acquired taste. Just ask my fiance. So no, but the reason I say that is because when it comes to, I mean, most photographers who have a decent amount of experience would expect grand entrance, blessing, cake cutting, dinner, you know, first dance, all the standard formalities that you're going to get within a wedding. That's normal. They know how to shoot that. They know how to shoot the cake and all that. But there might be things on a bride and groom's timeline that they have that are personalized, unique moments. I've got to be very careful because I don't want this to get out, but I have a very surprise. We have a very awesome, amazing surprise pregnancy announcement that we're doing here at their wedding. And it just so happens to be one that I'm also officiating because I offer officiant services. Brides hit me up, especially if I'm your DJ. Yep, that's a new thing. And so we have this just amazing moment that we're going to be setting up for them. But if I don't tell the photographer, hey, this is going to happen, be ready, then they're going to miss that instant emotional reaction. And that means and then here's the problem with that is that, you know, weddings are not like a birthday party that come around every year. You get one shot, literally and figuratively, pardon the pun, you get one shot and you don't get those moments that come back again. So from a photographer's standpoint, then, give me another maybe misconception about photographers that you wish couples would know.
Misconception about us. We do more than just lay back. We're not just the wallflowers. We can be engaged in your session. I guess the misconception is the photographer is not just the person who captures the moments. I feel like I help create the moments. I get the kids dancing. You've seen me. With the kids. I am doing the cha-cha just so that I can turn around and get the bride getting down and doing the Charlie Brown. Because otherwise I don't know if she'll do it right then and there unless she has a couple more drinks in her. And I know my photography period may be ending in a half hour and I don't have enough of the bride dancing. So I'll get out there and do it too.
Yeah. Well, and actually that's a very good point that you brought up there because typically speaking, and in reference to the dance time, typically speaking, the DJ's job is to be kind of that hype person. And I would say for the most part, that's the case.
Oh yeah.
But I have had photographers like you, and you're a rare breed because there's a few others, but that's about it, who will go out there and they'll say, hey, throw your hands in the air. And they're taking pictures I'm like, cool, I'll just hit play and let you guys, rock it out, and it's a situation to where it's really amazing when you have that person that understands, like for instance, I've had weddings like we talked about where there's not been a coordinator and the wedding party's ready to come in, or we know that the pictures are done and we want to keep the wedding party outside so that they don't ruin their introduction. But I'm finishing the last of my programming or I'm setting something up or whatever. And I'm like, hey, could you do me a favor? Could you just make sure you grab the wedding party members real quick for me so they don't come in? I'll be right there in a second.
Yeah.
That's not technically something that's a part of the photographer's job description. If they wanted to, you could just say, no, I'm taking the pictures,
Oh gosh. But
yeah,
you work really well that way. I've had to come to you and be like, hey, I got to pee. Can you hold on 2 seconds?
Yes, actually I do.
Yeah. Oh wait. So,
Yeah. And the other thing about it is and I'll preach this until the cows come home to brides and grooms that may be listening, the wedding vendors that are listening are about to just nod their heads and like it's headbanging, because there's no such thing as a perfect wedding.
No.
There is a wedding that's you, but there's no such thing as a perfect wedding. And the last wedding that we worked together, if you recall correctly, the individuals who are friends of the bride, they are not professional caterers. The individuals who are friends of the bride began serving the meal during the cocktail hour. Remember that?
I remember. I forgot about that. Yeah. Yep.
During the cocktail hour, I look up and everybody's got plates of macaroni and cheese and green beans and fried chicken. The wedding party's already infiltrated the venue. They're sitting down and eating. And I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? So I first of all, I went up to the people that were serving and I'm like, well, it's a little late for that now. Go ahead and keep serving. But just for the record, if this ever happens again, you never, ever, 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 ever serve dinner until the bride and groom have had a chance to eat, unless specifically noted otherwise. And so we had our grand entrance, our grand introduction was completely different. We only introduced the couple at that point because the wedding party were already eating. And then as a result, it ended up moving our timeline up an hour earlier. You remember that?
Yeah.
But the thing is that you like I came to you guys and I said, hey, here's what's going on. We're going to have to pivot, Friends style, Ross style, if you will. And
pivot. So.
Yeah, pivot. But at the end of the wedding, the bride was just like she was blown away, because even though that wasn't an ideal situation, it was the outcome of the wedding that she was ultimately, in for. And I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure, didn't those pictures just come out the other day or?
That was a different kind of situation. So I'm actually doing their edits a little bit later in the timeline, but yeah. I will tell you a wedding that I did in October. I had 6 of them in October. They had a donut cake. So, but they had their special donuts at the top. Well, by the time it was time for them to do their cake cutting, all their special donuts were gone because all the little kids took them, and it was so cute. So I was like, oh, just shove the glazed Krispy Kreme in your mouths, and they loved it. It was so great. But
I had one. It was only a couple of months ago, I think, maybe 2-3 months ago. And we did the cake cutting. That was all done, and it was just a 1-tier. It was just a 1-tier. It wasn't a big 3-tier kind of thing, and everybody else had cupcakes and stuff like that. So here is Chase. You're absolutely right. Well, it wasn't a catering company. They were friends of the bride. So I got to cut them a little bit of a pass there on that.
And but brides just don't care about those details. They really
yes.
Don't.
So the cake cutting happens. They have this beautiful 1-tier cake. And here I look over at the beginning of dance time, and here's this lady just cutting slices of the couple's cake. And not, it wasn't even good slices. She butchered it. It was like a bad surgeon job or something like that. And that's a very good question. So I'm like, ma'am, I'm like, please don't take it.
I love it. I've sent pictures to your guy, David. Was that his name? The guy who shot
David. That's my assistant. Yeah.
I sent pictures to David that I got of him. He's doing the Zoolander look. I have tons of you. I have DJs from Marion down to Bloomington. I've sent their pictures to, so I've got all kinds of. Yes, you guys promo me, I'll promo you. We all promo each other.
Yeah, that's something that I didn't even think to ask of when I first started an untold number of years ago in this business when I was young and skinny. And but now what I do is and that's the other thing is it's a good opportunity to advertise. I'm really bad. I'm really, really bad about remembering to tag photographers, because by the time I share a picture years later, I forget who took the picture.
Oh, yeah.
So this is why watermarks are so important when it comes to that sort of thing. Yeah, send me the picture of me being a badass at what I do, but put a watermark on it so it's properly copyrighted. And actually, that does jump into something I want to talk a little bit about. Will you please talk a little bit about copyrights and you as the photographer, how those work with contracts, couples, and so on? It's a really kind of piece of information I think couples should know when it comes to you as the artist.
So it's not just for weddings. It's for pretty much anything that a couple or a person signs a contract for me. Technically, in my contract, let me give you the technicalities. In my contract, it says don't edit it with a bunch of a bunch of filters like from Instagram. You are supposed to tag me if you share on social media. But when it comes to printing, do what you want. Here are my recommendations. That's how my contract. However, I have gotten some couples and some people that will add an Instagram filter. 9 times out of 10, the filters aren't so intense that just any person who's untrained could tell. Like, you know, Tom, Dick, or Harry, or Sally, or Sam couldn't tell, but I can, right? So it's fine.
Right.
But I have gotten some where it's like, whoa, that is not my work. I'm not gonna throw a fit. I'm not. Legally, I'm supposed to throw a fit because you signed a contract, but I'm not gonna throw a fit. Dude, I have so much more. I have bigger fish to fry, or whatever it is that's saying cliche. Just don't tag me if you're gonna do some really crazy edits. And then you know, I'm not saying, you know, tag your photographer in every single photo you post, but every, you know, once in a while, if you're going to post just the reception one day and just the cake cutting the next day, be like, shout out to Charrie and Photog Boss-Babe because she rocks, or you know, whatever. But if not, I'm not going to come after you either.
Right.
And I think,
but I think it's important to know, because this is something that a lot of people don't think of when it comes to pictures. Everybody knows if you sit down with an oil and a canvas and you create something, you're the artist. That is your work of art. There are legal ramifications for trying to plagiarize that work of art. But a lot of people don't know that you taking a photograph is the exact same thing legally. When you take that photograph, your positioning, your lighting, the angle that you have, the kind of picture that you have, and things like that is all up to your artistic eye. And the filters, the colorization, the editing, and so on all factor into that. So it's really important that when if you get a picture from a photographer, my personal thing would be don't alter it. It was, I mean, unless the person was just absolutely horrible, or if you have a release. I think you can sign a release a lot of times, right?
Yeah, and I've done that too. And honestly, like I said, I don't freak out. Know your photographer well. That's another one of those things that you really need to understand when you book someone. I am on like those photography groups that are global on Facebook. And I have shared my response that, come on, guys, seriously, the more time you focus on this one little mama who posted a filtered picture of her and her 3 children 2 years ago, the less time you have to grow your business and be a better person and just a better person in general. So somebody just said, Charrie, your attitude about sharing pics is awesome. What advice do you have to offer to new DJs about getting pics? I mean, if a photographer is shooting the event and you engage the photographer and you give them a little moment to Vogue or Zoolander out a picture or a selfie with the bride and groom, if the photographer is not sharing it with you, that sucks. But I think you should totally reach out and share your info with the photographer, share your info with the videographer, with your cupcake person, with your caterer. Share it. You know.
There's a good question. What was the biggest issue that you ever had with a DJ in your experience? Or what's the worst? Actually, I think it's saying, what's the worst issue you've ever heard of a photographer having with a DJ, period, whether it was you or someone else?
I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of intense photographer DJ issues. I just don't. I mean, some of them refuse to turn off the lights at all. And that's hot. That sucks a little bit. Some of them won't look at you and be like, hey, we're going to do this next thing next. Oh, I think the hardest thing is if they won't really understand, like, let's just say the bride is an hour and a half late to getting her makeup done or whatever it is. But the bride only had you till 8 p.m. Okay. Yeah. And I go and I tell the DJ, hey, look, I'm not going to leave exactly at 8 because I'm not a horrible person. But I got to honor my time and my ROI also. So let's try to, sneak up a little bit of the timeline. And if the DJ is just a complete a-hole about it, that's going to suck a little bit. But, it never happened to me, but it's happened to other people that I know.
So Chase, you're going to start a fight. So this now. Okay. So I was actually going to get into a couple of things where there's, I won't say it's always a fight, but this can become a couple of points of contention when it comes to DJs versus photographers, things like that. So I'll tackle, there's 2 actually. The first one that Chase brought up is, what's with putting all the gear near the DJ's booth? And I'll ask you for your opinion. I'll explain why I bring that up.
No.
And I don't mean you specifically, but I just mean, yeah.
You're giving me an aha moment, because I never realized that I always did that, but now I realize I always do that. I think what I need to do is get one of those tool belts, or like the beer can belts, and have lens. I do have a backpack, but I can't reach. I mean, I'm not like, Lara Croft. I can't just.
That would be pretty badass if you could do that. I'm just saying.
But so I do utilize your space, and I try to be cognizant of what I do. But I've even
let me kind of approach that from our perspective, and this will help out. And this is more like wedding vendor talk, but that's okay. So professional DJs, definitely not where I started. Professional DJs, we have a very particular kind of setup that we like. We're very anal retentive about where we have our speakers in many cases and our lighting and things like that. Most of us prefer to have a sleek, professionally looking setup that looks great. And one thing that has a tendency to happen more often than not is we have a tendency to have, and this is videographers too, a bunch of bags and gear right by our setup. So what happens is when that's in photographs, potential brides and grooms don't know that's not necessarily our stuff, and they think it just looks kind of crappy. And I'm not saying this is a you thing. I'm saying this is a thing that we run into all the time as DJs. And it's definitely a point of contention. And so if you are a photographer out there, or a videographer, we're happy to work with you. If we have space under our table, if we're using a table or whatnot, then maybe we can accommodate that if it's out of sight. A lot of times we have our extra bags and cases and stuff in a supply closet or in somewhere that's out of visual. Sometimes, worst comes to worst, I'll stow it underneath the cake table or something where nobody's going to be messing around.
I do that a lot.
Yes. The other thing that I was going to ask, oh crap, I forgot what it was.
You got me in the hot seat now.
Oh shoot. Thanks a lot, Chase. You threw off my train of thought.
Light poles.
Do what?
Maybe my light. Oh my gosh, my tripods on which lights are put. He seems to a lot of work and stuff like that.
Crap, I can't remember what it was. It's just something from a DJ perspective. Oh, I'm really gonna say the DJs here are gonna really. I promise.
Oh me, I mean, I know I represent.
Let's talk about moments that look great on Pinterest that in reality fall flat. So it looks good, but the execution of the moment is not the ideal place. And specifically, I'm referring to the fake send-off during the dance time. And right now, I know I just triggered a ton of DJs that are watching, or any that's going to watch, because this gets us. We work really, 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 really hard to build energy, to understand dance floor dynamics and this kind of thing. And we have the bride and groom say, hey, our photographer wants to do a fake send-off, which kills the momentum. See, there they're going, which kills the momentum of the dance floor, stops it in its tracks, and is a very, very good place for anybody who's looking for an excuse to leave for one reason or another to actually do that. So here's my question, because I know this is probably something that you've done or you've heard about and all that. My question is, from your perspective, what would your solution be? I have an idea in mind. What would your solution be to not only counteract the effect of losing the dance floor for a fake send-off, if there's going to be one done prior to the end of the night?
So so there's a couple things. 99% of the time that I can think of, maybe not 99, 90% of the time, my bride is asking me for the fake send-off.
Right.
She actually wants more people than less. As you know,
sure.
If the wedding reception starts at 6 and it ends at 11, most of the people are gone by 10.
I'd say everyone except for the ones that are there to party. In a lot of cases. Yeah.
So, but when you do a send off with 25 people, it's not.
It doesn't look nearly. Yeah.
Send off is with 75 people. So I think that's why the bride and I talk about those things. Now, really nowadays, we're talking Indiana. Most of our send offs are their sparklers. That's really the majority of my send offs nowadays. It used to be bubbles, sparklers. Everybody doing the I don't know, the little
the arch thing. Yeah.
But we don't really, and often what dictates it is when the bride needs me to leave. So if the bride can only afford me until 9 p.m. or she chooses a budget that allows
Right.
to for me to be there all throughout the morning and she's done with her 12 hours at 8 or 9 p.m., for example. Photographers don't, what did you say? Okay. So I don't really know. I mean, it sucks because I think it's a miscommunication. There's a little triangle over here, right? Here's the bride
Yeah.
and groom top. Here's you. Here's me. I
Mhm.
don't really care either way.
Mhm.
I don't like fake send-offs that much. I'm going to be honest.
Mhm.
My favorite, hands down, has been very wet. Could have been for all I know. I can't remember because this was years and years and years ago. The DJ had all the people left. There was only like 25, 30 people. They all got together and sang Don't Stop Believing by Journey. And the bride and groom were in the center holding
Yeah.
something. I got up on a table, my little 4'10" body, and took a wide angle lens shot. And
Yeah.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. It wasn't posed. It was just candid. So let's do more of those.
Yeah, no, and that I think what you've really brought up is a very interesting point. And I'm going to try not to step on my own toes here because this is venturing into the realm of things that DJs are supposed to do. But DJs are supposed to inspire and foster a sort of sense of celebration and joy. I really like to be able to build this anticipation throughout the evening, via the various unique things that we do as far as the formalities or personalized moments, so that by the time the dance floor actually happens, people are just like bursting to celebrate. Like I can't wait to get out there and throw down. And not only does that make the picture so much better, it makes the energy so much more intense. But you're 100% right. Doing, if the dance time just kind of peters out and you got two people going, yay, it doesn't look good for the photographer. So here's my suggestion, and this is something that maybe if you're a photographer, you can take to other DJs, and to your couples and brides and grooms. If they say, hey, we want to do a fake send-off before the dance time ends, the first thing I would do is say, hey, by the way, just FYI, that will probably kill whatever dance time you have, and it may kill the entire party altogether, depending on when we do it. So here's what we should do.
Okay.
Let's have everybody go outside. And let's have everybody grab their glow sticks, their sparklers, whatever it is. And then once that happens, have the bride and groom lead a parade of their guests back in. Have them lead the charge. Instead of this milling about and you come in whenever you want, have them and brief the wedding party on how important their job is as far as driving energy back onto the dance floor, and have them lead this procession back in. And then you start off with a banger, right? Just something that everybody's going to go to town on. And then sometimes this is the point in the night where if you don't have kids or you don't have sensitive adults, you might ratchet things up a little bit with the Cardi B's or the Lizzos and things like that. But this is something, yeah. So it's all about think about it as this is a little bit of a law enforcement kind of thing, but think about the energy at your wedding as like a chain of custody, right? Most of the time the energy stays with the DJ and there's that thing with this synergy with the crowd and so on. But temporarily for the send-off, the DJ has to hand that off. The master of ceremonies has to give that to the photographer. And the photographer's job is to preserve that energy, that spirit of celebration, and just throw down outside and be as interactive as I know you are. Yeah. But then take that and bring that back in with you and give it back and let us blow the night out. And that's how you can make it really successful. It took me until a year ago to figure that out. I've been doing this a long damn time, and then finally somebody said, "Why don't you do this?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense."
Let's video this in action the next wedding we shoot together, because that.
Yes. Now, there's one last thing I want to talk about, because I think we talked a little bit about it, and I want to cover what are the major styles of photos that you see. And I know that there's. Let me ask you this question this way. The light and airy style that you see a lot of, right?
Versus the moody and dark and mysterious.
Yeah. So I've seen some photographers, especially like amateur, and I mean brand new photographers, use the light and airy style as just an excuse to kind of wash everything out because they don't necessarily have the training to edit and do that. And that's not to say that everybody that does that has that style, but what's your kind of take on some of those various bold and moody, light and airy kind of style?
Oh, that's a really good question. And because I do pretty much the whole gamut of photography from newborn and maternity to, I started in boudoir 10 years ago.
Oh, yes.
So, and Boudoir has the whole gamut of different type of photography styles. I would say look at their photography style, and maybe be honest. So when I was looking for a photographer for my wedding, I did make the mistake, and I still feel bad to this day, where I was like, I really love your style, but not the dark and moody. Because he had 2 different styles on his website. And he was like, well, if you don't like my style and you're trying to dictate, I'm not for you. I'm like, cool. I was just trying to see which one you were going to choose for me. Which one makes sense. So I think, yeah, I have seen a lot of really washed out photography lately where you can't see. I mean, you are supposed to see a little bit of shadow in people's faces. I mean, other than my pimples, you should be able to at least see a few of my cheekbones. It shouldn't be completely washed out. And I think that's where, just going back to another conversation we had, it doesn't stop at the wedding. It takes me 40 to 60, 80 hours to edit. And my editing process is Lightroom, Photoshop, Topaz Labs, Portrait Pro, and a couple of other very expensive pieces of equipment. And sometimes I run one photo through every one of those different things to get the right feel. So yeah, if it's too dark, that drives me nuts, because when they print, especially if they're going to print at Walmart, Sam's Club, CVS, Walgreens, a 1-hour Photoshop, it's going to be horrible when it prints 90.
Yeah. So real quick, we've got just a couple minutes, just 1 or 2 minutes left here before we got to jump off here. I'm going to have you tackle this last question. For newer photographers, how does a photographer develop his or her style?
And, I've been getting a lot of questions lately from people on Facebook asking, hey, are you doing tutorials? Your photography's gotten amazing in the last, I will admit, in the last 3 years, it went from amateur looking. I'm not saying 3 years ago my stuff sucked, but now it's just, I'm even impressed with my own work, right? So you just get to a point where you're like, damn, I'm getting good, and that's where I kind of feel like I am. Other amateur photographers are saying that too. It takes a long time to find your style. And mine still changes every day. Sometimes my boudoir is moody and sexy and dirty. I did a 18-year-old birthday shoot today. She wanted grungy as hell, so it was very moody and dark and greeny. It was the feel that she wanted, and I'm trying to go for it. We'll see what happens. If you have any questions with regard to becoming a better photographer, reach out to me. I may not be the right person, but I can show you the videos that I watched. And
that was actually my last question. If we have any brides and grooms or anybody else that wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
So Photog with a G, photogbossbabe.com, or just find me on Facebook, Charrie Photog Boss-Babe.
And that's Charrie, not Cherry, by the way, guys.
Charrie with an H. Charrie with an H. Yeah, that's it.
First of all, I want to thank everybody who tuned in. I want to thank you guys for doing this. Is obviously, to me, this is kind of one of my babies. This is something that's very important to me to help out couples. I think there's a lot of misinformation or lack of information out there for them. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Please share this. We're going to be back next week with an entirely different new vendor. I think we're going to either do coordinators or cakes. One of the two. And Charrie, I want to thank you. Charrie, excuse me. I want to thank you so much. I corrected myself. I want to thank you so much for being our subject matter expert here today. And I can't wait, of course, the next time until we get a chance to work. It's always a trip when you're there.
Thank you, Adam. And if you need a cake taster, caterer taster.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, wedding food has ruined me.
I love it. No, anyways, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week on Inside.